Greetings. Welcome back to Sentimental Elephants, a musical journey, where I take you on the trip through my life through music, going alphabet style through different bands, choosing an artist per letter to talk about my experience with them and the effect that that artist had on my life and my relationship with their work. We are now at the letter G. Um, the As far as my music collection goes, the G spot is actually one of the more busy ones. Luckily, I know where to find it. I'm hilarious. Seriously, though, yeah, fair number of major artists uh, in my world fall under the letter G. Obviously, Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go a different direction, even though I love their music and I've got a lot of it. Also, Government Mule, Genesis and Peter Gabriel, Gomez, Marvin Gaye, Gentle Giant. That's two G's. Grand Funk Railroad, one of the best shows I've seen. Love that band. Now we're going to go with something different. Guided by Voices, GBV, GBV. Yeah, Guided by Voices from Dayton, Ohio. I'd like to, continue my trek through. In this case, this is a band that's a little bit more my own. I don't know that many, if really any people that I could say are Guided by Voices fans. That's cool. It's nice to have something a bit to myself, and maybe share with other people to introduce them to. Kind of continuing on with the weird stuff, but they're not too weird. They've got a certain amount of weird material to them by somebody's definition, but there's also a fair number of songs they can do. I could just play, and people can, regular people, whoever they are, the normal ones, supposedly they exist somewhere. I could see them enjoying that. They're more melodic in a lot of ways, but they definitely do have their eccentric moments. The history of Guided by Voices. Again, I'm going to go a little more into the history than I normally do because it's more of an unfamiliar artist. The history of Guided by Voices is the history of a man by the name of Robert Pollard. Robert Pollard, again, Dayton, Ohio. He's a very prolific songwriter, singer, musician. And he was making independent albums under the banner of Guided by Voices with varying different lineups of friends while working through the day to support his family as a teacher. But not really getting anywhere, and his parents and his parents and his wife were starting to apply a little pressure that maybe this just wasn't going anywhere, and he should probably hang it up and just focus on his main job. One of the classic quotes has him saying to his mother, "But Mom, I'm a genius." And her response was, "At what, Bob?" I'm glad my mother has always been much more supportive than that. So, as what was probably going to be what he saw as his last effort, he put together an album called Propeller. Just try to cram all of the good songs that he had on him into that album. The joke was the name of the album was Propeller because it was going to propel them to the big time. Well, it sort of did and sort of didn't, but it's an odd little story. He just kind of put the album out and just left it there, but his manager kind of put a bit more effort into getting it into different, sending it to different magazines and record labels, and tried to push this album a bit more than the previous ones were. And it wound up, through odd circumstances, ending up in the hands of a few different New York musicians and writers and tastemakers, notably one by the name of Matt Sweeney, who I believe was a writer. And he hears Propeller and is fascinated. Well, wait, what is this band? Where are they from? Who is this? And the person had it says, I really don't know anything about them. So they try and find more information on them. Eventually was able to hook up with Robert Pollard, who seemed a little bit bemused to have any attention paid to him. I said, well, I've got some other albums you want to hear? And he's like, yeah, send them. And he sent the albums, and Matt Sweeney said, yeah, we're doing an independent music showcase here. I think it was in New York. It's like, would you be interested in playing? And band's kind of broken up at this point, but I can put together a lineup. And so they came, they did. And I think a number of people were there. I believe Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, and some other writers and label chiefs. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they got picked up by, it was not a big label, but independent label, which was Scat Records, and started to get a bit of a buzz going. And it was kind of an interesting story. Out of nowhere, this teacher, in his mid-30s, which is fairly late for a rock and roll breakthrough, just was this band was on the lips of a lot of people. And from there, they moved on to make more albums, going to progressively bigger independent labels. They never really made it to a major label, but they went from there to Matador Records, which is home of Yola Tango and probably a number of other good bands, but Yola Tango is the one I know the most. From there to TVT for a little bit. They made two albums there, one of which was produced by Rick Ocasek from the Cars, who had just produced the first Weezer album. And they were part of a movement initially of what was known as lo-fi, because they preferred more kind of independent demo-y sounding things than polished production. Sebadoh, who are Lou Barlow, one of my favorite songwriters. Sebadoh was another lo-fi band. There's a few of them out there at the time. When they moved to TVT, that became a bit more of a more polished, more professional sounding recordings. From there, they went back to Matador, but they kind of kept that sound. And in 2004, I believe it was, I think it was New Year's Eve, 2003 to 2004, they had what was going to be their last gig. No big issue. I think Robert Pollard just felt, yeah, it's time to wind things up. And so that was the end of Guided by Voices. Until, after a few years more of making solo recordings on his own, Robert Pollard reunited what he called the so-called classic lineup, the lineup from the early Scat and Matador records, and over the course of a couple of years, they put out 6 albums, and then wound up breaking up again through sort of personal issues. You can look that up if you want to. But it wasn't that long until he got back together a lineup of Guided by Voices, and that is the lineup that's still recording and still touring. Now, the story of Guided by Voices, you can replay a lot of my comments from the fall, the last video that I made, and a lot of it does still apply. However, they're a bit more accessible. I think it's because some of his influences, he likes some Robert Pollard, meaning he likes a certain amount of psychedelic and a lot of garage bands, but kind of more, more immediately reachable bands like The Who. I think there's a little bit of Beatles influence in there. Definitely, if you hear their early recordings, you'll hear a REM influence. But it's still its own wonderful, unique sound. Some of the best songs got really great bright melodies, or they've got cool riffs. They also have a lot of sort of shorter songs, and some of which are more abstract before you get to another great great anthemic song. The lyrics are, I find, really interesting. I won't go into as much depth into them, but I do greatly enjoy. Here's a really clever turn of phrase that'll crop up in a Guided by Voices song. Now, there have been a fair number of different members at different times of the band, but really there's been four main lineups. Before that, in his independent record days, that's where most of the people will sort of come in. It's various different changing groups of friends on the different albums. When they got finally signed to a label in scat, the lineup was based generally around on Robert Pollard, vocals, Tobin Sprout on guitar and vocals. He actually wrote a number of really good songs as well. Mitch Mitchell, no, not that one, but Mitch Mitchell on guitar and Kevin Fennell on drums. Differing bass players, usually, a guy named Greg Demas. That lasted them close to the end of the Matador era. When they split, there was one album, Mag Earwig, that came out with him being backed by another band called Cobra Verde. And that was the one album that he did with that lineup. He took Doug Gillard from that lineup on guitar, and from there to the end of the main run, before he broke up the band in 2004, it was him, Doug Gillard on guitar, Chris Farley on guitar, and changing rhythm sections. So that's that second lineup. When he reunited, it was with what he called, like I said, the so-called classic lineup of Mitch Mitchell, Kevin Fennell, Tobin Sprout, Greg Demas. And the second reunion was himself. There's a different guitar player originally, but he was replaced later by Doug Gillard, and the rest of the band was Bobby Bare Jr. on guitar, who's the son of Bobby Bare, the country singer, Mark Shue, I believe, on bass, and Kevin March, who had been in the last lineup before the first breakup, on drums. Now, here we get to key thing with Guided by Voices, incredibly prolific output. If you ever feel like you've led a productive life, go to Wikipedia, look up the article Guided by Voices discography, and then think again, because there's a huge amount of material there. There's 35 plus main albums, lots of different singles and EPs, and there's 4 different box set compilations of what was called Suitcase, which is just songs that he'd recorded and put aside and kept in a suitcase. It wasn't really a suitcase. It was, I believe, an ammunition case, because he worked for a bit at a company that made them. But he had it was full of cassettes of just demos and stuff that he'd done, and all kinds of unreleased songs. I think at one point he was asked if it was true, the story, that he'd written 4,000 songs, and his response was yes, but only 3,000 of them are any good. I'm not sure if it's quite 4,000 in reality, but there's a lot of different songs, some of which are very brief, and some of which are kind of like little sonic doodles. But there's a lot of amazing, solid, wonderful songs of various different kinds. Just you can pick up all various albums and just find several of them are just jam full of great songs with these weird little curiosities in between them. Alien Lanes is one of an early classic. That has 28 songs on it. It's very, very solid. Also, from when they got noticed, they had a reputation for very energetic live shows, frequently very drunken ones, but just a powerhouse live set. So again, now we're getting to my story with the band, and it's quite similar to my story with the Fall. In fact, it was back in, I believe, the mid '90s. I first heard about this band, Guided by Voices, through a an email list dedicated to the Fall. Again, ask your parents. But yeah, and they, pardon me, this was a band that was getting noticed at the time, and they started talking on this email list about this, new arrival band, and they were compared to the Fall. A bit more melodic than the Fall, but certainly with these kind of same rebel kind of indie attitude, same abstract lyrics and song and album titles, and kind of a similar aesthetic, as I say, a bit more accessible. And so, well, I was at the time living in the Glebe, which, for those of you who are not from Ottawa, is a region downtown. I was only there for a little while. I had sociopath for a roommate, and discovered this band, and I was took a certain amount of solace in listening to their music. The first thing I was actually a box set. One of the it's kind of one of my go-to bits of musical one-upsmanship, of trying to show how much more of a music geek than I am than anybody else. I'll say is like, I've got 6 box sets from Guided by Voices, a band you've never heard of before. I got the first box set, which was a compilation of their first, it was a collection of their first 4 albums, plus 1 album of other unreleased tracks from the time. I thought it seemed like, wow, this is such a great bargain. It's a 5-disc set, and it was really cheap. The albums were actually really short, but quality over quantity, and they were really interesting. But just kind of a taster for what was to come. Similarly to the Fall, there would be one of these bands that I would just keep getting the albums regularly as they came out, and I wasn't, I enjoyed them, but I wasn't absorbing them all the way. But there usually be about 2, 3, 4 songs on them that I just love a whole bunch. Again, there was a bit of a little bit of a drop off. In this case, it came in 2001 because I got married, and then I lost my job, and I just didn't have the money. And the Great Pilferage happened, where I lost a number of albums, so I wasn't able to really get them back. So didn't get those first few albums when they came out. The last few albums, pardon me, of that original run when they came out. But a few years later, I was back on my feet, and I started remembering, yeah, I remember loving that band. I don't want to get caught back up, and I did. I was able to get the previous albums, including Propeller, which for some reason had never gotten before, and I fell back in love with them, and that was my real breakthrough moment. That's when I started being able to take in those albums, as a whole. But there was another bit of a lag when they had the reunion, and I didn't get those albums right away. There was a few years before I got properly caught back up, and I've been getting their new albums ever since. And much like the Fall, the later material, though really good, I have enjoyed, but I'm still kind of absorbing them, because they keep coming out at such a rapid pace. I was saying, there was, I think during the lockdown years, like 2020, 2021, and 2022, I think they averaged about 3 albums a year, which is a lot to try and take in. I remember saying a couple of months ago, I was like, gee, hasn't been a new Guided by Voices album since January. Maybe somebody should check in on Robert Pollard, make sure he's okay. Of course, then I look it up. It's like, okay, there's a new album coming out in July. A bit longer than usual gap, but he's still, I didn't say cranking them out, but that's the thing. Those albums are all great. Every one I've listened to, I've enjoyed. I've never had a feeling that he's just, going through the motions. But, it's good for him that he's so prolific and so creative. But kind of be nice for him to slow down so I could kind of appreciate it a bit more. Flipping over my page of notes here. Why do I love Guided by Voices? It's, they're kind of a band I feel, like I say, it's a bit, yeah, they're a bit more for me. This is one of my bands. This is a cool little thing. They had their little brief burst of, not quite mainstream success, but their own little run where they were the indie darlings, and then it's like, okay, the attention moved to other people, but they've kept going. Even during the years they've broken up, Robert Pollard's kept recording and releasing solo material, and the faithful have stuck with them, and I've been mostly fairly faithful, and it's been very rewarding. They're a little bit closer to the mainstream than the Fall have ever been, although the Fall, and I should have included this anecdote in the Fall video, but I forgot, and I'm not going to go back and re-record it, but the Fall did manage to make an appearance of their music in an Oscar-winning movie, which was Silence of the Lambs. The song Hip Priest is playing in the background in the scene where Jamie Gumb is chasing Clarice Starling in the dark, and that's the music that's playing in the background. So the Fall did manage that. Guided by Voices were never in an Oscar-winning movie, but they make occasional appearances in TV and movie soundtracks. Hold On Hope showed up in an episode of Scrubs. Teenage FBI showed up in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like I said, their music can potentially have some more mass appeal. I could throw that, and a few songs there is on a playlist, and people probably would enjoy it, unlike much of the Fall, which is like, please turn that off and never play that in my presence again. And there's an anthemic quality in some of it, or they've got big bold rocker songs that have, as I mentioned before, cool riffs, but the lyrics are always they're not your standard issue lyrics. I'll just say that much. And it's just fun discovering. There's a lot of undiscovered country with Guided by Voices. I like the fact that I can put on an album of theirs that I've listened to many, many times, and all of a sudden there'll be like 2 or 3 songs that'll come out at me that I never noticed before. Probably my favorite Guided by Voices song, the title and much of the lyrics, I won't repeat it, but I greatly relate to it with regards to my life, which is a song called Everybody Thinks I'm a Rain Cloud When I'm Not Looking. There's a number of albums rather that would make a good starting point, because as I said before, there's a bunch of them that are just loaded full of great songs. I mentioned Alien Lanes before. Under the Bushes, Under the Stars, which was the last one from the classic lineup, and it's just jam full of great songs. A song called Drag Days, Underwater Explosions, a song called Your Name is Wild, which was the favorite Guided by Voices for my friend Dean, who passed away recently. Dean Rasmussen, miss you, brother. You're one of a kind. Cutout, which is another great song. There's lots of great ones in that one. Also, the two albums that they put out on TVT, which are Isolation Drills, and the one before that, which was Due to the Collapse. That's the one that was produced by Rick Ocasek. Yes, they're a bit more of a commercial sound, but they're still wildly creative and full of great songs. I'm going to wrap this up by something I don't have for other artists. I've got gear, stuff I want to show off. So this is a poster from the City Folk Festival. No, they're not really a folk band, but they did play it in 2016. I was not at this show, but as you can see, it is autographed. I wasn't going to City Folk at that point, but that was bought for me This poster was bought for me some years later because it was available to be purchased by my bestie Jay, and she bought it because she is awesome. I love you, bestie. You rock. And this is one of my prized possessions. And I got another one, which is a set list from a show I did manage to attend at Ottawa Blues Fest. No, they're not a blues band either. From I think it was the 2019 one. So I've sort of gotten to see them live twice. Really, it's 1.5 times. Pardon. The first time was was on the Isolation Drills tour, and I saw them at one of our local music venues. I'm really embarrassed to say this. I lasted halfway through. It's not because the band or the performance or the concert was not good. It was a really good show. They just wore me out. And I was thinking, these middle-aged drunks got way more energy than I do. Also, I hadn't had my breakthrough yet, so I didn't recognize as many of the songs, and that kind of, I felt really disappointed that I wasn't able to go all the way through. But I did see that half show. And then they broke up. I thought, oh great, I'll never have a chance to see them again. And then they reunited. It's like, great, I might get a chance to see them, and they broke up again. And I think, oh no, I'm never going to see them again. And then they played City Folk, but I was not able to make that show. I was like, oh, dang damn it, I'm never going to get to see them. They came back for Blues Fest, I believe it was 2019. I don't care what else is happening. I am going to see that show. And I did. And it was amazing. It was on the Zeppelin Over China tour. I believe that was the current album. Although they may well have released an album during the concert, for all I know. And they said, Robert Pollard said that they were going to do 30 songs in 60 minutes. And have a look at this set list, which I caught. He threw it out into the audience. I caught it. I fought off other people for it. They did do, in fact, 30 songs. However, it was more like 75 minutes, but whatever, still impressive. I don't know if I'd be able to remember 30 songs. But it was an utterly kick-ass show. It was one of the high points of my concert-going career. So that's Guided by Voices. So want to go check them out? Go do so. They're really amazing, super fun band. Like I said, lots and lots of great songs. So hope you found that illuminating, and I hope that you come back for the next video when I get to the letter H. Okay, bye-bye.